And here again, where else but in Japan, they're testing out the Minority Report technology of advertising that really scans you and knows more about you than you know about it. And again, if you watch that clip, and of course you can get all of these clips and links to them from my homepage, CorbettReport.com/radio, and I'll post the links, the show notes to this after the show airs. But if you go and watch the clip, you can see this technology that scans people's faces and records them and guesses their age and notes what they're looking at and records that for the company. And of course, what is this? I mean, where is this information going? Do you think this information is just going to for example, the pasta company that's advertising a certain pasta so that they can record how many people in their 30s like seasonal pasta? Or is this going to an advertising company that is keeping a database of all of this information and will eventually begin to recognize you wherever you go, whatever of their ads you're looking at, and will be able to compile just a complete list of all of your interests and things that you're looking at? It's really quite horrific to think about, especially as we come more and more into an age where everything we do is being tracked and databased and compiled somewhere, including, of course, the ever-present Facebook, which is always monitoring what we're doing and compiling more information for its own list. And there was an interesting report that came out recently about how there exists the technology now to steal a wide swath of people's personal information, including their social security numbers, by taking their picture and putting it into a program which compares all of their pictures against pictures in the Facebook directory, finding their Facebook profile, finding their birth year, and then using a formula that apparently exists to predict people's social security numbers from their birth year, and using that to steal their social security number. And apparently this can be done in an alarming percentage of cases. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was something approaching 20% of cases. They could actually steal someone's social security number with nothing other than your picture. So imagine all of these advertising companies and all of the information they're compiling on you, and if they can nexus into your Facebook profile and all of this data is being accumulated somewhere. And this is the type of thing that if it just sprang out of nowhere, again, I think people would instantly recognize it for the tyranny that it is. But when we see it approaching ever so slowly and creeping up on us through things like Minority Report, well, maybe we're more prepared to go along with it. Oh, I saw this in a movie. Oh, yes, this technology's arrived. Well, I knew it was coming. So, again, just another interesting aspect of this. And again, I think Philip K. Dick was someone who was very much trying to warn us about these possibilities. The Martians are always coming, but here we are just accepting it as if it's no big problem. So, again, a fascinating aspect of this predictive programming. And there's another aspect to this type of technology and the way that it's being introduced to us that I want to switch to, and that's the concept of microchipping. Because, of course, as people who are keeping their eye on things are aware, the microchipping agenda is going on apace. So what we have in the microchipping agenda is this idea that everyone is going to take a microchip and is going to love it. And for more on this, I would highly recommend a documentary called Predictive Programming and the Human Microchipping Agenda. And I'll include the link to that again in the show notes for today at CorbettReport.com/radio. But right now, let's listen to a clip of an interview in which I'm talking to Greg Nicoletos of Noverichip, in which he's talking about this excellent documentary, Predictive Programming and the Human Microchipping Agenda. So let's roll that clip.
Yeah, well, look, what it is, it's a very broad and well-researched document, which was actually written initially by Matt, which we then decided to put into a movie. And what it covers is basically the beginning of what the New World Order is, how it's actually starting to be mentioned more in society. It then basically covers, predictive programming, which is, the subtle, not the subtle, it's basically the engineering, I guess, if you like, of society, utilizing, conditioning programs, whether it be through video, through TV, through media and the like, to basically get you to embrace an idea that you normally wouldn't embrace. So we give great examples of that, obviously, with Hollywood and the like. And yeah, it's just very well documented. I'd recommend people to actually watch it. So it covers the broad aspect of everything on that side.
Yes, absolutely. As would I. I can vouch for that. Certainly, I've seen the documentary. It is extremely well researched, and there were so many examples that you provide there of instances in which the media memes are being added in. So it's great. I think a great resource for people. But
it is, and what we do is we cover. Well, we basically give the end user a background of VeriChip. We cover the alliance between IBM. We showcase the military industrial complex alliance. We showcase where VeriChip is taking the product into market. We showcase how RFID is basically being implemented into society. And then ultimately we say to the people, this is where it's headed. If you can't actually see the writing on the wall, it's ultimately up to you. But the reason we've chosen this vehicle, I guess, and to utilize more Hollywood footage in a sense, we're then also utilizing the same tool that they are using against us, which is the sense of familiarity. So when someone has actually seen a movie before, and then we can actually showcase the movie which has actually showcased microchipping in it. Like Wes actually said, who was, the editor, he did so much work on the movie, it's ridiculous. A lot of the stuff, you just goes over the top of your head. It filters into your subconscious, but until you actually see it, you just go, you realize that, you are being programmed by these craftsmen, who truly understand the human psyche. So people need to also understand that no movie at the end of the day that is coming out from Hollywood or from a think tank, sometimes these movies aren't there to make a profit. They're basically there to mold and to shape our minds. So, we're talking about, large corporations with huge seed funding from not only the IT, but also the military industrial complex and the like. And a portion of, of their, propaganda is through the media and through movies. And when one goes into a movie, it wants to be entertained. So obviously the critical thinking component of the brain truly switches off as we just sit back and become zombies. And that's not to say, look, that I don't go watch movies, but I do. But at the same time, it's you have to know what you're seeing and just pick up on what's happening.
That's so true, and I like the way that you broke that down, because what you're really doing in this movie is kind of reverse engineering the social engineering that they're programming us with through this media.
Yeah, exactly. We're showing them what they are doing to them by utilizing their techniques, I guess. So it just breeds a sense of familiarity. So when we actually showcase movies that that they have used, people immediately embrace it and say, okay, well, I understand the Minority Report, I understand, all these other movies that have actually showcased microchipping from James Bond and the like. So, then we're not actually telling the story to the end user. Hollywood is telling the story. So therefore, you can't actually demonize, we're the people not be chipped or, our movement. All we basically have then become is storytellers. And I think that's what's actually made this movie go quite viral, which is excellent.
Once again, Greg Nicoletos of the We the People Will Not Be Chipped movement at wakeup.tv. That's WAKEUP.tv. And for people who haven't been there yet, I really suggest that you go there for just an excellent overview and a resource on the whole human microchipping agenda that's being inserted into our society and which we are no doubt being prepped for each and every day through the media that we're consuming. And for people who don't understand that or don't believe it or want to see more, again, I could not recommend highly enough Predictive Programming and the Human Microchipping Agenda, and that is linked prominently right there on the front page of wakeup.tv. So if people go there, they can watch it in its entirety right there on Vimeo. And as we say in that clip, I mean, there's just so many examples of it, from X-Files episodes to the Time Bandits movie to the Simpsons episodes to Universal Soldier and the conspiracy theory movie from 1997 with Mel Gibson, and just so many different clips are in there that any one of them taken by themselves are probably not that compelling. But when you start to compile them all and look at them all and look how they're preparing us for this future in which everyone has a microchip inside their body, And we're just being slowly introduced to the idea. The technology is already there, and some people even already have this technology. But how are they going to get us all to accept this technology and accept the idea of it unless they start feeding us with this daily stream of media introducing us to the idea? So I think it's quite obvious from that perspective alone how the predictive programming scheme works and whose interest it's really serving, because as Greg Nicoletos was speaking there, and he speaks from experience, he was talking about the idea that this is all being funded by the mainstream IT companies. All right, well, we're coming up on a break, and as we do, let's come back after this with some more on the predictive programming idea and some of the real mysteries of this idea, at least mysteries from my perspective. Welcome back, my friends, to tonight's edition of Corbett Report Radio, and here in the final few minutes, we'll continue our discussion of predictive programming and the ways that it functions to prepare us for what's coming in the future. But as I said before the break, there's something very mysterious about, or at least one mysterious aspect of predictive programming that completely eludes me and that I can't put my finger on. So perhaps I'll leave it to you, the listeners out there, to think about and to get back to me either on air some other time or perhaps through my email on corbettreport.com. But it's the concept of, well, how should I say this? For example, let's take 9/11. Now, most people have probably seen or heard about the rather remarkable prediction of the events of 9/11 in the pilot episode of The Lone Gunmen, a spin-off series from the X-Files. And the pilot episode aired just a few months before 9/11 and featured some people in the government staging a terrorist event by hijacking an airplane by remote control and trying to fly it into the World Trade Center. And then, of course, one of the stars of that show, Dean Haglund, came out later and said, oh, by the way, Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files and the creator of this show, well, he'd been slipped some ideas by the CIA at various Hollywood cocktail parties over the years. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So that, to me, is extremely interesting, an extremely interesting linkage that needs to be explored more. But there are other things to do, for example, with predictive programming in 9/11 that I can't personally put my finger on. And an example of that, one example would come from the Matrix movie itself, where I think a lot of people know now that if you actually freeze frame the exact second where Arthur Anderson? Not Arthur Anderson. Where Mr. Anderson, I forget what his first name in the book is, Neo, gets his passport handed to him, and there's a split second where you can actually freeze the frame, and if you flip it around, you can actually see that his passport expires on September 11th, 2001, which is a rather remarkable piece of information to be included in The Matrix of all films, which I think we all know is something of a predictive programming meme generator for our current day and age. But what does that mean? I mean, I can't imagine a reality in which the prop maker for The Matrix was in on the 9/11 plot, or that the filmmakers were let in on the day of the plot. I just can't imagine how that kind of information could possibly have gotten to that level. So I don't see any way that that kind of thing can really function. Another really interesting example I'll direct your attention to, you can find on the Prison Planet forum under the title Comic Book Conspiracy Symbols and Messages in Comic Books. Just an absolutely fascinating thread with dozens and dozens and dozens, really hundreds of examples of comic books predicting such things as the destruction of the World Trade Center. And if you see one of them out of context, you would think, oh, well, that's just a coincidence. But when you see literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them piled up, you start to wonder if there's something more going on. So I don't know what that more going on really is. Is there really some sort of concerted effort among, for example, comic book creators to try to implant ideas about 9/11 decades in advance? Or is there something more archetypal going on, some sort of collective consciousness thing going on about the destruction of the Twin Towers, or even, of course, the idea that has its Freemasonic links in the destruction of the towers? Well, way too much to get into, I think, right now, but at any rate, I'll leave you with that tonight. And once again, all I can say is you have to start researching this for yourself if you haven't already done so, and I'm sure many of you have, because this is a fascinating subject. But we'll leave it there for tonight. That's all for Corbett Report Radio, and this is James Corbett reminding you that you can find all of the clips and articles mentioned in every episode on corbettreport.com/radio. Until tomorrow night, take care.